Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you're alone in a darkened room. The temperature drops, your breath becomes visible in the sudden cold, and then you see it. That face, the one that made Linda Blair's head spin in The Exorcist. The snarling, ancient visage that has haunted nightmares for decades. But what if I told you that the real story behind that face is far more disturbing than anything Hollywood could conjure? What if the demon we feared on screen was actually protecting us from something infinitely worse? Tonight, we're ripping away the Hollywood veneer to expose the blood-soaked truth about Pazuzu, a being so ancient, so powerful, and so terrifyingly complex that civilization itself trembled at the mere whisper of his name.
Picture the desert. Not the romantic Lawrence of Arabia desert. Picture the killing desert of ancient Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, where the sun doesn't just beat down, it punishes. Where the wind doesn't blow, it devours. This is where our story begins, over 4,000 years ago, in the cradle of civilization itself. The Assyrians and Babylonians didn't have the luxury of dismissing the supernatural as superstition. For them, the invisible world was as real as the Tigris and Euphrates rivers that gave them life. And in that invisible world lurked Pazuzu. Let me paint you a picture of this entity. Imagine standing before a creature that defies nature itself, a body that appears almost human, twisted and grotesque. The head, some accounts say it's a lion's, others a dog's, with a skull that seems to grin at you with malicious intelligence. Eyes that have witnessed the birth and death of empires. A scorpion's tail that curls and uncurls with hypnotic menace, dripping with venom that could kill gods. Eagle talons where feet should be, designed not for walking, but for grasping, tearing, holding you down. And the wings, 4 massive feathered appendages that when spread create a shadow so vast it could blot out the sun. This wasn't some artist's imaginative flourish. This was designed, calculated, every element chosen specifically to trigger primal fear in the human psyche. Pazuzu was the king of the wind demons, the absolute ruler of the scorching, flesh-stripping winds that roared in from the desert without warning. These weren't gentle breezes. These were apocalyptic forces that could bury entire cities under sand, that carried disease on every gust, that turned fertile land into barren wasteland overnight. The ancient texts describe him as the one who breaks the bones of the living, he who carries plague, the bringer of fever and death. His very breath was said to cause crops to wither and skin to blister. When Pazuzu moved through the world, suffering followed like a shadow. But here's where the story becomes truly horrifying.
To understand Pazuzu, we must first meet his nemesis. We must descend into the pit and face Lamashtu. Lamashtu wasn't just another demon in the Mesopotamian pantheon. She was the personification of every parent's most primal nightmare. The daughter of the sky god Anu, she was divinity twisted into something utterly malevolent. Where other demons might be bargained with or warded off, Lamashtu operated with single-minded, relentless purpose. Her targets, the most innocent among us. She would stalk pregnant women through the streets of ancient Babylon, invisible but ever present. The moment a woman felt that first quickening in her womb, Lamashtu knew. She would slip into homes through cracks too small for human eyes to see. Ancient tablets describe her with the head of a lion, the teeth of a donkey, naked breasts that suckled not her own children, but pigs and dogs, and fingers so long and bony they could reach inside a mother's belly and tear the unborn child away. The descriptions of her methods are genuinely sickening. She would place her hand on a pregnant woman's belly 7 times, 7 being a number of power and completion, and with each touch she would drain the life from the child within. Miscarriages weren't medical tragedies in the ancient world. They were Lamashtu's handiwork. Every stillbirth, every infant who died in the night, every woman who hemorrhaged during childbirth, this was all attributed to her insatiable hunger. But it gets worse. When she couldn't kill children in the womb, she would wait. She would hover over cribs in the darkest hours of the night. Ancient mothers described waking to the sound of their babies crying, only to find their children's skin burning with fever, their tiny bodies convulsing. The medical reality might have been infection or disease, but to these mothers it was Lamashtu's touch. It was her poison seeping into their children's bodies. Archaeological evidence shows just how terrified people were. Excavations have uncovered countless amulets, incantation bowls, and protective talismans, all designed specifically to ward off Lamashtu. The sheer volume of these artifacts tells us something crucial. Infant and maternal mortality wasn't just common, it was epidemic. Losing a child or dying in childbirth was a genuine, constant terror that every family faced. Now, imagine you're a mother in ancient Babylon. Your baby is sick, burning with fever, convulsing. Modern medicine doesn't exist. Antibiotics are 4,000 years in the future. Prayer isn't working. The priests can't help. Your child is dying in your arms, and there's nothing you can do. What wouldn't you do? What force wouldn't you invoke?
This is where Pazuzu enters the story, and this is where everything we thought we knew about demons gets turned on its head. The ancient Mesopotamians had a problem. Lamashtu was essentially unstoppable. She was divine. She was the daughter of a god. Regular protective spells and prayers were like trying to stop a tsunami with an umbrella. You needed something more powerful, something that could make even a divine monster think twice. You needed Pazuzu. Archaeological discoveries have revealed something absolutely fascinating and deeply disturbing. Researchers have found thousands upon thousands of Pazuzu amulets, statuettes, and plaques. These weren't hidden away in temples. These were in people's homes, in their bedrooms, hanging over their children's cribs. Let that sink in for a moment. They were putting demon statues over their babies' beds. The inscriptions on these artifacts are what really chill the blood. They're not prayers in the traditional sense, they're commands, contracts. One particularly well-preserved amulet from the 7th century BCE reads, "I am Pazuzu, son of Hanpa, king of the evil wind demons. I ascend powerful mountains which quake, the winds which sweep through the skies I restrain. I am the one who holds back the hand of Lamashtu." Notice the language. This isn't asking politely. This is invoking a power, binding it to a purpose. The amulets would be worn by pregnant women constantly. They would be hung on doors, placed under pillows. The image of Pazuzu, that nightmarish composite horror, would greet Lamashtu at every turn. The logic was beautifully simple and utterly terrifying. When Lamashtu arrived to harm a child, she would encounter Pazuzu, and even she, the daughter of the sky god, even she feared the king of wind demons. She would flee, the child would be spared. But consider the psychological weight of this practice. You're essentially inviting one horror into your home to ward off another. You're making a deal with a demon. You're acknowledging that your child's life depends on the whim of a supernatural monster who could just as easily kill you all if he chose to. The incantations used to invoke Pazuzu's protection reveal this anxiety. They're elaborate, legalistic, and desperate. One recovered text reads, "Pazuzu, great demon, king of the evil wind demons, I call upon your strength. Stand at the door of my house, be a bolt upon my door. Seize Lamashtu, that evil daughter of Anu. May she not approach the woman in pregnancy. May she not approach the woman in childbirth. May she not approach the suckling child." These weren't casual prayers. These were binding contracts with specific terms. You acknowledge Pazuzu's power. You offer him recognition, perhaps offerings. In return, he performs a service. He protects against Lamashtu. It's transactional. It's business. And like all business with supernatural entities, there's an element of danger.
Here's what makes this arrangement genuinely unsettling. Pazuzu wasn't protecting people out of benevolence. He wasn't a guardian angel. He was a demon doing what demons do, exercising power. The ancient texts make this clear. He enjoyed his role. He took pride in being feared. His protection came with an implicit threat. I am holding back Lamashtu, but I could just as easily unleash myself upon you. Some scholars have found evidence of what happened when people failed to maintain their end of the bargain. Texts describe sudden sandstorms that buried homes, unexplained fevers that wiped out entire families. Were these natural disasters, diseases, or were they Pazuzu's wrath? The ambiguity was intentional. Fear of Pazuzu was what made him effective against Lamashtu. If he was just a benevolent protector, he'd have no power. But because he was genuinely dangerous, genuinely capable of destruction, Lamashtu would think twice before confronting him. This creates a horrifying paradox. The only thing protecting your child from a baby-killing demoness is an entity that brings plague and famine. You're safe only because you've made yourself valuable to something that could destroy you in an instant. The psychological toll this took on ancient people must have been immense. Imagine living every day knowing that your survival depends on a delicate balance between two supernatural forces, neither of which actually cares about you. You're not loved, you're not cherished, you're a pawn in a demonic power struggle. And yet, the evidence suggests it worked.
or at least people believed it worked enough to continue the practice for thousands of years. Pazuzu amulets have been found in archaeological layers spanning centuries. This wasn't a short-lived superstition. This was a fundamental part of how people survived.
Fast forward to 1971. American novelist William Peter Blatty is researching his upcoming book, The Exorcist. He's looking for authentic demonic imagery to make his story of possession feel real, grounded in actual mythology rather than pure fiction. During a visit to an archaeological site in Iraq, he encounters a Pazuzu statuette. The artifact is small, perhaps 6 inches tall, but its impact is immediate and visceral. The snarling face, the wings, the talons, it's perfect, it's terrifying, it's exactly what Blatty needs for his demon. He doesn't dig into the full mythology. He doesn't explore the nuance. He takes the image and strips away 4,000 years of complex cultural context. In The Exorcist, Pazuzu becomes something he never was in Mesopotamian mythology, a straightforward agent of evil. He's a fallen angel whose sole purpose is to corrupt innocence and defy God. He possesses a 12-year-old and subjects her to unspeakable torments. There's no protection, no nuance, no dual nature, just pure, unadulterated malevolence. The film was a phenomenon. It terrified audiences worldwide. It became the blueprint for every possession story that followed. And Pazuzu, the ancient protector of children, became synonymous with the corruption of children. The irony is almost unbearable. For 4,000 years, mothers invoked Pazuzu's name to keep their babies safe. They wore his image over their hearts. They prayed to him in desperation. And in one film, in one cultural moment, all of that was erased. The protector became the predator. The guardian became the threat. But here's what makes this transformation genuinely tragic. In forgetting Pazuzu's true nature, we've lost something important about how ancient people understood evil. We've simplified it, flattened it, made it neat and comprehensible.
The Mesopotamian worldview was sophisticated in ways we often don't appreciate. They didn't see the supernatural world in simple black and white terms. Demons weren't just evil for evil's sake. They were forces of nature, expressions of the harsh realities of existence. Pazuzu represented the desert wind because the desert wind was real and it killed people. But the desert wind also brought change, cleared the air, and sometimes broke devastating heat waves. Lamashtu represented the terrifying reality of maternal and infant mortality. In a world without modern medicine, these deaths were incomprehensible. They needed explanation. They needed a face. Lamashtu was that face. Was it helpful? Did it provide comfort? That's debatable. But it gave people a sense of agency. If there was a demon causing these deaths, then maybe, just maybe, there was a way to stop her. And if it took another demon to do it, so be it. This is where the horror really lives, isn't it? Not in the jump scares or the special effects, but in the desperation, in the willingness to embrace one nightmare to avoid another. The real horror of Pazuzu isn't his appearance or his power. It's what his existence says about the human condition. It's the fact that people were so afraid, so desperate, so helpless, that they needed to believe in him.
We like to think we're beyond all this now. We have science, medicine, rational explanations for disease and death. We don't need demons to explain why babies die. But do we really understand death any better? Have we conquered fear, or have we just renamed our demons? Consider this. When modern parents face the unthinkable, a sick child, a dangerous pregnancy, what do? They pray. They make bargains with God. If you save my child, I'll be a better person. I'll go to church. I'll change my life. It's the same transaction, the same desperate negotiation with supernatural forces. The only difference is we don't have a name or face for our Pazuzu anymore. But the impulse, the terror, the willingness to deal with dark forces if it means protecting our children, that's still there. It's always been there. It's hardwired into us as parents, as humans. Pazuzu's story is our story. The details change, the names change, but the fundamental horror remains. We are fragile, our children are vulnerable, and sometimes the only thing standing between them and oblivion is our faith in something bigger, something powerful, something that might be on our side.
Recent excavations have provided even more disturbing details about Pazuzu worship. In 2019, archaeologists working in northern Iraq uncovered a cache of Pazuzu amulets in what appeared to be a mass grave of women and infants. The implications are horrifying. These amulets didn't save them. Despite their prayers, despite their precautions, they died anyway. Did Pazuzu fail them, or was he never there at all? The artifacts themselves tell a story of evolving desperation. Early Pazuzu amulets are relatively simple, just his face, perhaps an inscription. But later examples become more elaborate, more detailed, more frantic. Multiple demons are invoked, longer spells, more complex rituals. It's as if people kept adding layers of protection, trying to make the magic stronger, more effective. And perhaps most chilling, some amulets show signs of having been deliberately broken or defaced. Someone destroyed them intentionally. Why? Did they stop believing? Did Pazuzu fail to protect a child, leading to a furious rejection? Or was it an act of spite by Lamashtu herself? We'll never know, but the broken amulets remain, silent witnesses to faith shattered and hope abandoned. The Exorcist wasn't wrong to be terrified of Pazuzu. It was just terrified for the wrong reasons. The true horror isn't possession, it's protection. It's the deal we make. It's the fact that sometimes, often, the only thing that can save us from one monster is another monster. And that second monster doesn't care about us, doesn't love us, is just as likely to destroy us as save us. Pazuzu is terrifying, not because he possesses children, but because people believed they needed him. Because the alternative, Lamashtu, death, loss, was so unbearable that any protection, no matter how dangerous, was preferable to facing that horror alone. Today, Pazuzu exists in multiple forms. There's the Hollywood demon, the monster under the bed, the face in our nightmares. But there's also the ancient guardian, still present in museums and private collections, still wearing that same terrible expression. Which one is real? Which one should we fear? Maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the real question is, what does our version of Pazuzu, the one we created for ourselves, say about us? We took a protector and made him a monster. We took complexity and made it simple. We took moral ambiguity and made it absolute evil. Is that progress, or is it a loss of something important? An understanding that the world isn't neat, that protection comes with a price, that sometimes the guardian and the threat are the same being. Here's what archaeology and anthropology have taught us. Every culture has its Pazuzu. The name changes, the form changes, but the function remains the same. There's always a lesser evil we invoke to ward off a greater evil. There's always a price we're willing to pay. There's always a line we're willing to cross when someone we love is in danger. The ancient Mesopotamians were just more honest about it. They didn't pretend their protector was pure or holy. They didn't sanitize the horror. They accepted that sometimes salvation comes from dark places, and you have to be willing to stare into the abyss if you want the abyss to protect you. In transforming Pazuzu into a simple movie monster, we've lost this wisdom. We've lost the understanding that protection can be monstrous, that guardians can be dangerous, that sometimes the only thing keeping us safe is something that could just as easily destroy us. We've made our moral universe simpler, cleaner, easier to navigate. Good guys and bad guys, heaven and hell, angels and demons. But reality has never been that simple. The ancient Mesopotamians knew this. They lived it every day. When they looked at Pazuzu, they saw something we've forgotten how to see, that survival sometimes requires alliances with dark forces, that desperation makes philosophers of us all, that a parent's love can be so fierce, so absolute, that they'll invoke demons if it means saving their child. That's the real horror. That's the truth Hollywood couldn't capture.
So I leave you with this. When you watch The Exorcist now, when you see that demonic face flash across the screen, what are you really seeing? Are you seeing Hollywood's invention, a simple monster designed to terrify? Or can you see through that to the ancient original? Can you see the desperate mothers who wore that face over their hearts? Can you see the paradox, the complexity, the terrible beauty of a demon who protected children? Can you see the real horror, not in the demon himself, but in the world that needed him? Pazuzu is still out there, in museums and mines, in artifacts and nightmares. He's still watching, still waiting, still ready to protect or destroy, depending on what the moment requires. And maybe, just maybe, in our darkest moments, when we face our own modern Lamashtu, disease, disaster, death, we're still calling his name. We've just forgotten that we're doing it.
The wind still blows, the desert still kills, and somewhere, ancient or modern, Pazuzu is still king. If this journey into humanity's oldest nightmares has left you unsettled, disturbed, or desperate for more, smash that like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments, what demon should we resurrect next? What ancient horror needs to be dragged from the shadows and into the light? Because the past isn't dead, it's not even past, it's waiting, watching, and it has so many more stories to tell. See you in the darkness.